It might not surprise you to find out that I have a lot of opinions on games. Like a lot of them. It's not an exaggeration to say that myself, and others, have already experienced a lifetime of games in my short time on this world. I've played a lot of damn games. A lot of good ones. A lot of bad ones. Games that took big swings, and games that didn't really try pushing the envelope at all. Much like movies, the games that often stick with me the longest are the ones that maybe didn't sell the most, or perhaps bit off more than they could chew. There's something endearing about an earnest and heartfelt attempt to try something different, whether it accomplishes this goal or not. Here's 15 games that I feel need some kind of remake or reimagining, along with some reasons why. And if any of you brings up that this video seems like a pile of half-finished scripts being made into a video, I will throw a wrench at you.
That's what this sack of wrenches is for.
Alright, so I'm going to start this one off with a softball. There have been some damn fine entries in the Cosa Nostra genre, but not enough if you ask me. We never got a Goodfellas game, or a casino simulator, like Casino Casino. We did get a Sopranos game of questionable quality, and despite where the Mafia series ended up, 2/3 of that series is excellent in my eyes. There have been mob-adjacent Pizza Tycoon games, and even a decent indie offering in the form of City of Gangsters. While a little intricate and unwieldy, there is some fun to be had there and an impressive attention to detail. None of these, however, compared to the elegant simplicity of Doug Sharp's 1986 offering for home computers, The King of Chicago. Published under the Cinemaware label, which itself had a whole host of good games under it, Wings immediately comes to mind. King of Chicago puts you in the shoes of an up-and-coming major domo named Pinky vying for control of Chicago's seedy underbelly following the removal of Al Capone from the picture. Along with your trusted capo Peepers, you embark on a quest to wrest control of the streets of 1930 Chicago. While not exactly a deep simulation, the game tasks you with juggling respect, power, and money in equal measure. Drive-bys, storefront bombings, and some minor accounting work would drive any man to embrace a life of crime at some point. I'd love to see this brought back to life, honestly. The game has tons of charm and a wonderful presentation. The hallmark of most, if not all, Cinemaware games was definitely style over substance. So the addition of a few more mechanics would take this game a lot further than it currently goes. A short runtime and unclear narrative paths, you never really know which way a conversation is going to go sometimes, are the main items needing the most attention here, in my opinion. Now I'm going to get a little weird with it. Keeping with the Italian theme, I'm willing to bet that most of you are unfamiliar with the character of Diabolik, created by the Giussani sisters. He's an Italian anti-hero, kind of a mix of Batman, the Green Hornet, and James Bond a little bit. He's also a renowned thief, and alongside his partner in crime and love, Ava, gets up to all sorts of criminal hijinks and shenanigans. This is the kind of guy who would steal the Statue of Liberty if he had a decent place to store it in his secret lair. Diabolik has had comics, movies, books, toys, you name it. He's a genuine icon of Italian media. But unsurprisingly, he's gotten little to no love here in the States, and I think that's a crime. With the height of Diabolik's American exposure likely being an admittedly hilarious episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Driving off to the store. Gonna pick up some bread.
It's a genuinely cool character concept, and I unironically enjoy the franchise as a whole. To my knowledge, there were 12 Diabolik games made for home computers by a company named Simulmondo. Diabolik was goofy, cheesy, and hilarious both intentionally and unintentionally. I think there's room in the current video game ecosystem for a Diabolik stealth game in the vein of Thief, and the character is bonkers enough to provide enough creative wiggle room to allow for some funny and imaginative gameplay. A long shot. I guess that's kind of the whole point of this video. Syndicate. Oh man. I don't have too much to say here. Bring Syndicate back as a corporate-themed RTS. That's all. Syndicate deserve better. With things being as they are these days, the Persuadatron seems like the perfect weapon to reflect the times we inhabit currently. Bring back Syndicate. Period. Holy shit, Snatcher. This game needs to be remade. Set in the futuristic Neo-Kobe city, you play as Gillian Seed in this totally not Blade Runner tale of a special police force looking for synthetics. This is such a fantastic piece of work from Konami, and set the stage for Hideo Kojima to become one of the most prolific writers and designers of the last 3 decades, not to mention Suda 5-1. The main thing holding it back is the nature of Japanese visual novels and graphic adventures of this time. Gameplay usually consists of triggering a series of arbitrary flags to move the game along, and all these titles eventually hit a point where the player will have exhausted all obvious routes and will resort to clicking on everything on every screen until stumbling onto whatever it was they were missing. Dead of the Brain, Marine Filth, Snatcher, sooner or later you hit this point and it can get demoralizing. Replacing these mechanics and finding a way to respect the original art style are probably the 2 biggest things keeping something like this from ever taking off. And maybe licensing rights. In the interest of being concise, I suppose any of those games that I just mentioned would be a good pick. Also, a Police Knots remake would be just as excellent, although for my purposes here, I'm going to stick with Snatcher. What would you do if you were out taking a stroll one night and you happened upon a Jiangshi? What would you do? How does one deal with a hopping vampire? If you've ever played Phantom Fighter, then you know that the answer is to punch that motherfucker square in the face. Based off the classic 1985 horror comedy produced by Sammo Hung, Mr. Vampire, you play as a kung fu master who goes from town to town liberating the oppressed townspeople from an army of the undead that have risen up, with the help of his assistant. Using items he finds along the way, such as a Tanten mirror, you fight through each town, earning scrolls to unlock more powerful and complex moves. Upon entering the local training hall, you are greeted by a disciple who insists you answer 80s trivia before you are allowed to see the Shifu. One can see how this is a bit of a sticky wicket, especially if you aren't from the 80s. This reminds me of the Simpsons trivia bits from Bart vs. the World, which I also hated. Gating progression behind trivia is certainly a design choice. Get rid of the trivia, get a hold of that Mr. Vampire license and remake this game. Let me kick child zombies in the face again. James Rolfe once complained about a lack of good Godzilla games, and goddammit, he was right. While I actually enjoy the Super Nintendo Godzilla game, somehow, I'm not blind to how ass that game is. He eventually landed on the PS2 GameCube fighting games as his Godzilla games, but I had found my happiness a little earlier with the Japanese Dreamcast release of Godzilla Generations. This was a no-frills affair where you're tasked with leveling various cities in Japan as one of the several Godzillas from the different eras. While there have been more kaiju games on offer in the last 20 years, Exhibio is pretty fun. Generations was what I always wanted. Give me big monster and city and let me destroy. Now, as fun as that is, this game has several shortcomings that I'd love to see reimagined or redesigned. The game requires complete destruction of the city in question, which includes tiny family domiciles as well as skyscrapers. While the skyscrapers are a joy to blast and bash your way through, having to take the time to make sure you step on every single story home quickly becomes an exercise in tedium. The controls are pretty awful as well, and the camera leaves a lot to be desired. Tighten this one up and it'd be killer. Here's another weird one. This is like the Soul Edge from Soul Calibur got mixed with Omikron and maybe even a little bit of Persona, which is not surprising for an Atlas game. You play as a sword named Maken X, who has the power of brainjacking and manipulating someone's soul. A scientist finds all this out, gets kidnapped, and his daughter awakens the sword to go save her papa. I remember my brother renting this one and being way more into it than I was at the time, but the game has grown on me over the years. It offers up 13 different characters to brainjack with different moves, strengths, and weaknesses. The story is more complex than you'd think, with 7 different endings total being possible. The game also looks pretty good for 2000, and like most Dreamcast games, a little upscaling really makes it shine. The game handling is a little stiff, which is problematic for a game centered around first-person melee combat. Here's a complaint I rarely make. The field of view feels like I'm looking through a cardboard tube. A wider field of view would have made my experience a little easier here. Of most of the games on this list, this one actually seems pretty feasible. Polish the controls and widen that goddamn field of view and this will be gold. As it turns out, I should have done more research. Maken X did receive more or less the treatment I'm looking for in the form of a port. It was ported to PS2 and did everything I'd asked for it to do. Switched the camera to third person and tightened up the controls. Maken Shao, never heard of it. I'm gonna have to play it now. But, since I mentioned it earlier, I might as well get this out of the way. Now, I generally don't like David Cage games. I have no personal beefs with the man. The majority of the games have just never hooked me enough to want to play them. Omikron was the exception. I don't know if it's because it was his first game, or if it was David Bowie, or what. But this game still has its claws in me, and has refused to let go. Of all of David Cage's work, this is the one that I truly feel achieved Neil Breen levels of sincerity and genius and insanity. The entire plot is hinged on the dumbest trope imaginable. An alternate universe requires your soul, as the player of the Omikron video game, to inhabit the body of some schmuck and save their world from evil and doom. Choosing to open your game by immediately breaking the fourth wall, and then dumping the entirety of the plot on top of that linchpin, is a brazen move that feels as stupid as it is earnest. The game 100% gets behind this and reinforces this fact constantly. This game definitely has a vibe. If anything, I'd compare it to The Fifth Element in the way it blends like cyberpunk, mysticism, and that steel and glass meets sandstone kind of aesthetic. The world has a lot of creative detail in both the visual presentation and lore, and while some of the ideas have been worn thin in the years since, viewing it within the context of its time make these ideas feel fresh, and even to this day are pretty crafty in their implementation. Despite the graphics not aging particularly well, the world design here is top goddamn notch. Even some of the voice acting is pretty good, and again, there's David Bowie. And the dude from The Cure too, I suppose. Those graphics are pretty bad though, and the egregious draw distance on the Dreamcast version gives it an almost Silent Hill kind of feel. A lot of overt sexual tones, maybe one too many and way too early in the game that, to be frank, lose a lot of their impact when you look at those character models and realize their foot is just one big ass triangle.
What the hell? Oh my god!
The voice acting runs the gamut from pretty damn good to holy shit who let him in the booth, but the dialogue is mostly good. Although your Nomad soul character says some weird and questionable shit when checking out new bodies they can switch to.
Hey bro, come on now, dawg.
In another parallel to Maken X, the body switching mechanic is honestly pretty cool, and being able to switch bodies on a whim is an interesting choice. Each body having different stats that can be raised is a good touch that adds a little function to your choices, as well as they're having different levels of appeal.
Come on, man.
No, go past this part. In fact, never play this again.
The plot, while cohesive, feels pretty rushed, and the end definitely reinforces that belief. There's also some unused dialogue floating around in the game's files that show there were several things they wanted to add in, but probably just ran out of time or money. Overall, the plot is a pretty good tale of rebellion and resistance amidst sinister machinations. You can read some of it, that is. Some truly questionable font choices that border on illegible make some of that lore a little painful to absorb.
Try here. Stop. What the hell am I looking at?
The controls are pretty clunky, and the world geometry has some areas that require a precision that your character will not have while running, and the platforming segments, while few, are an exhibition in misery. These controls, blended with a mix of too many half-baked genre switches, hold this one back in the playability department. The fighting sections are anywhere from deplorable to tolerable, with it usually feeling like the former rather than the latter. The first-person shooter segments, however, are almost always abysmal and aggravating. Enemies will often begin shooting at you from beyond your visual range, and most weapons fire as fast as you can pull the trigger, a fact that enemies will exploit. The twitchy controls make accuracy a gamble, and the game often resorts to enemies materializing in blind corners or bum rushing you to drain your health. It sucks, and it isn't fun. Okay, so this kind of became my mini review for Omikron, but in my defense, I'm in the middle of replaying this, so it's been heavy on my mind. I'd love to see this game with nice graphics and tighter controls. Fix Omikron. Rip David Bowie. Now hear me out here. I've had this idea for a game in my head for like 10 years now, and this is the perfect time to exercise this demon. You ever see Beetlejuice? The original? Do you remember the handbook for the recently deceased? So in my head, I picture that to be like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but for dead people. And I think that would be a rich tapestry to draw from to make a funny-ass adventure game. Now, because I'm a hack, I can only ever see this game as a point-and-click adventure. But the idea of being a newly dead dude or dudette having to navigate the intricacies of haunting your former residence with the help of this sardonic little book seems like an amazing concept. And the only game I can recall ever coming close to hitting that mark would be Haunting, starring Polterguy.
Nice fucking model!
While not exactly the game of my visions, Haunting tasks you with terrorizing this one family in particular, so I guess that makes it more like Poltergeist than Beetlejuice, but shut up. By animating the various objects in their house until they get fed up and move, allowing you to follow them and repeat the process all over again. I'm not sure what this family in particular did. I suspect the husband has some cursed idol in his closet or something, but these poor people never get any rest from your otherworldly shenanigans. Some cute animations and a decent variety of haunting options help this one along, but the premise starts to wear thin by the third or fourth house. A variety of different specters and ghouls would have helped diversify the gameplay a little, while offering a good excuse to really spend the time and money on as many animations as one could feasibly come up with. A game like this would be hinged entirely on the amount and variety of options, and Haunting falls a little short. Granted, it's a Mega Drive game from '93, so I'm not exactly holding that against it per se, but I am looking at it from the lens of the idea I have. I don't know anything about navigating licensing rights, and I've never looked into the mechanics of licensing just one thing from a franchise, so the feasibility on that is questionable. I suppose one could just make a knockoff book like the document for the freshly departed, but that doesn't really have the same feel to it in my eyes. I'd settle for a reimagining of Polterguy with a broader scope at this point. I have a very special place in my heart for low fantasy media, and I place the blame squarely on Conan's big, dumb, sweaty shoulders. Honestly though, even without the De Laurentiis film, I'd have stumbled into this genre one way or another eventually. Something about that blend of magic, steel, and ancient bygone history just comes together to scratch a very particular itch for me. Before Namco ever published a Soul Edge game, they published this amazing effort from Visual Concepts. Weaponlord is incredible. I don't even know where to begin. The art style, it's goddamn amazing. It has that low fantasy vibe of old heavy metal magazines, but without all the titties. Like Conan meeting an Image comic, sort of. Critics at the time were actually kind of harsh on the game's visuals, but honestly, I see the vision here and I love it. The story? Evil demon knows you're coming to gut him, and he has enough guts to honor and agree to face you one-on-one. Guy's got integrity, I'll say that much. Pick your warrior and hack your way to your appointment with destiny. The actual fighting system on offer here is incredible. It gets pretty technical, with a deep and robust counterattack system and even thrust blocking, kinda harkening to Street Fighter III's parry mechanic. You even get attacks that can be performed in the middle of your enemy's attack animation that cut off pieces of their clothing and hair. And death combos, which are just fatalities. Not that that's a bad thing. The game's lead designers, James Goddard and Dave Winstead, have both worked for Capcom on the Street Fighter franchise. Both of them were fighting game tournament veterans and wanted to make a game that catered to that crowd in specific, to the point of optimizing the gameplay so it could be played over the old slow-ass X-Band service on dial-up, likely making it the first fighting game designed specifically with online play in mind. Could you imagine? While the game only offers 7 characters, the sprites are huge for the time and have tons of moves to compensate for it. The fighting system almost borders on too complex, making it a little daunting for newer players, but for those that stick with it, Weaponlord is a fantastic game with a lot to offer. Namco ought to do their due diligence and bring this one back. Let Soul Calibur rest. No one cares anymore. This is just baseless speculation, but it is pretty interesting how shortly after turning down making a sequel to Weaponlord, Namco went ahead and released Soul Blade and eventually establishing the Soul Calibur franchise with it. Makes you think. There were a few companies in the 90s that I held in super high regards over the rest. Guys like Psygnosis, Silicon Knights, Core Design, Visual Concepts, Crystal Dynamics. That last one is responsible for Akuji the Heartless, a game that I feel needs to be talked about a little bit more. Not enough games have Baron Samedi stomping around in it, and the world of voodoo is usually only used for quick jokes and one-offs. Few games ever care to explore it in any meaningful way. For a game from 1999, Akuji comes pretty goddamn close. On Akuji's wedding day, his bride-to-be is kidnapped before his own brother rips out his heart. Jesus. Swearing revenge, Akuji now must collect the souls of his departed ancestors and offer them up to Baron Samedi for a chance at revenge against his brother and to be with his love once more. Puzzles, platforming, some sick wrist blades, and a killer soundtrack make this game stand out to me. It hasn't aged well, and I'd love to see it remastered. There were a few Tomb Raider adjacent games during that era, But this one and Ninja Shadow of Darkness always stood out to me, although of the two I prefer Akuji. Fix it. Give Akuji a heart again. Oh man, what a mess Broken Helix is. I'll say it again, I can see the vision here, but what we ended up with is a mess. Not even Bruce Campbell could save this game, and they sure as shit tried. Bruce is snapping off one-liners constantly in this game, for better or worse.
Yeah, radical.
The game takes place at Area 51, wherein Bruce is an explosives expert tasked with defusing some bombs in the midst of a hostile takeover by a scientist named Fitz. The game's entire conceit was that it was marketing itself as a 4D game, in the sense that parallel events are occurring during the game in real time. A neat concept, but one that was better realized by other games as the years went on. The nature of the game allows for 4 different plot lines and thus 4 different endings. The individual plots are all pretty interesting, making multiple playthroughs a must. Very creative and even innovative, but horrible controls, and the camera being directly behind the player character made this a chore to play. Some hammy and halfway decent voice acting from the rest of the game's denizens, but Bruce is a star here, even if he is most definitely in I'm here for the check mode.
Yeah, radical.
Move the camera, fix the controls, this game will be great. Oh boy. I suppose this kind of ties into The Haunting starring Polterguy a little bit, seeing as how there are some parallels to that, as well as maybe Home Alone? The Deception series sees you tasked with defending your property from various do-gooders, ne'er-do-wells, and general interlopers on the premises via the use of increasingly intricate and deadly traps. Naturally, this is accomplished by serving as the bait in which to draw your prey into your snare. While the first one honestly looks and feels like a FromSoft game, Kingsfield anyone? It plays like a Baroque Home Alone spin-off where the consequences of the traps are vastly different than their cinematic inspirations.
Ah, Freeman. I see you are in this mess too.
You play as a prince who made a pact with the devil in order to exact his revenge on those who have wronged him. You collect the souls of the intruders by dropping boulders on their head, setting them on fire and such. A little Wile E. Coyote at times, but genuinely fun and worth playing through once just to see all the traps and the ridiculous dialogue from some of the people you get to. A few sequels came out, and one I only recently learned was connected to the franchise. Trapped. They chose to attach the franchise to the band of the same name as well. Naturally, the Deception series died shortly after this questionable marketing decision. Again, it's only within the last few months I found out that Trapped was a Deception game. What a shame. Bring back Deception, please. Now, despite me wanting to end this one as negatively as possible, turns out that the franchise in fact did not die after Trapped. Around 10 years after Trapped, they dropped another Deception game, Deception 4, Blood Ties, for the PS3. I don't know how this one got away from me. I'd never even heard of it. Looks like something else I'm going to have to play. Interestingly though, it seems the Deception series survives off a 10-year cycle. On every 10 years or so, they've released a Deception game since its inception in 1996. So, we're overdue. I am far from an EA fanboy, but they made some cool stuff on occasion, once upon a time. I used to love Need for Speed, and some people even like the Strike series. I'm not really one of them, but some people out there like them, and that's okay. I make an exception though, for Future Cop LAPD. Originally slated to be called Future Strike, I think, they decided to switch the name and put some distance between itself and the previous Strike games. And I don't know if it would have made any difference. This game is fucking awesome. After watching this most excellent and criminally underrated video by Ash the Conjurer, seriously, go watch his video, it's way better than this one, I revisited the title and found that I had a lot more fun with it than I had as a young man. You control a badass police mech that can transform into a hover vehicle and are tasked with serving and protecting via the use of extreme firepower. The mech is mostly a lot of fun to pilot, and while the auto-targeting can be a little wonky sometimes, it mostly works as intended. There are a lot of destructible elements in this game that make the levels feel a little more reactive than your typical action fare, and although this was pretty standard for the Strike series, it's nice to see it here as well. Consistency is important. The levels are chaotic mazes of dystopian architecture with layers of a near RoboCop kind of implied satire that makes it a little more fun than you'd expect. The game looks and sounds pretty good too, The soundtrack is a wonderfully bizarre mix of orchestrals and synthesizers, and the first level's music in particular gives me vibes of the chase theme from Terminator 1. Remaster this. Make it pretty. Give me better camera options. You're not dead yet, EA. You can still do something nice. I want to end this on a weird one, and Magic Carpet fits the bill. As the name suggests, you fly a magic carpet around and collect magic before one of the other wizards on the map steals it for themselves. Collect mana, unlock spells, battle giant creatures for more mana, defeat the wizards. Talking about this game doesn't really do it justice though. This is the kind of game that you need to play to appreciate where it's coming from and what it's trying to do. Saying that it's like Master of Magic if you were stuck playing as Sabu don't really cover it. 20 different spells to unlock, something like 70 worlds to fight in, a bunch of weird little guys to blow up, shout out to the giant green worm thing, and an honestly vibing soundtrack make this a unique offering from the mid-90s. Draw distance and awkward controls make this one difficult to enjoy, and the visuals aren't aging very well. Remaster this, add some more little guys and spells, and you'd have another classic that can survive the modern landscape. I'm going to cut it here. Better believe I have more ridiculous opinions about games that I think could survive today's entertainment ecosystem. I might make another one of these videos at some point if this one does well enough. Sorry for only the one video this month. I had a health thing that took a lot of my time, but I'll be back at it next month. If you made it this far, thanks again, and shout out to my day ones out there. Y'all know who you are. Also, expect another Wages of War update soon. Anyways, that's all I got for now. Take care of yourselves and each other.